let's say you collected a child, data. So you're gonna do functional behavior assessment or any other data collection on the child with severe behavioral issues. So you have collected the data and then you have to analyze those data. So before we analyze data, you have to organize your data, and then you have, quantitative data and qualitative data. So first thing you're gonna do is you have to categorize behaviors, because group the behavior. So similar behaviors. Let's say the child throws pencils, tapping pencils, or just just toss and catch erasers or pencils, and all those behaviors, or just blot out in the middle of a class. These are all disruptive behaviors, right? However, the behavior itself is all different topography. The behavior's form is different. So first thing, most of the people do group the behavior with the similar form and similar, topography, and that's how what they do first. So let's say, disruptive behavior, and then, non-compliance behavior, and then aggressive behavior, and then, some emotionally very, violent behavior. So we have all kinds of these behaviors. That's what usually ABA method we do first. So disruptive behavior itself is also, we could divide, child disrupt the whole class, or child disrupt only themselves, and then a little bit of a neighborhood. So it's not like all disruptive behavior the same. So I named it those, only the behaviors only disrupt their own learning. I call that is a passive off-task behavior. Passive off-task, and then whole class, disruption. So like a distraction and disruption, and so it's like a passive off-task. It's more like a distraction, their own learning, right? However, disruptive behavior is loud, active, and it's like a bubble blood out. It's a very loud, active behaviors, even though it's not violent or aggressive. However, it make teacher may stop in the middle of speaking, and other children's, attention is disruptive, right? So those, two types of behaviors we could divide. So it's all focused on the child behaviors. And then mostly people finish there. So that's it. This is all behaviors, and the child shows disruptive behaviors, and then this is the group of behaviors that the child shows disruptive. Disrupt the whole class. And then these are the aggressive behavior, and then child just did very just like bad words, and then or just like very aggressively just hurt other people's feelings and all that. So that's how child show behaviors. And then these behaviors usually go by about 6 different categories. So I made this like a very active, loud disruption, the whole class, and then passive but distract their own learning. So it's like a passive off-task behavior. And then next one is a non-compliance and non-response. So non-compliance, non-response. And then next one is aggressive and violent behavior. So aggressive is more like a defiance behavior, not violent, but aggressive and defiance, it's toward others, right? And then next one is more like emotionally very difficult. It's like a self-harm, and it could be part of their disabilities, but it could be part of their own. Yeah, it could like EI or just some ASD and those disabilities they have, and then they could show this very violent emotional outburst, violent self-harm behaviors. And then last one is more like definitely it's disability based, but these days we have more students like that. It's like a social deficit, even though it's not disability yet, but many students have a weak social concepts social sense, and then people skills. So it's like a lack of empathy in others. So, and then very hard to read the other's mind. So their behaviors is like many people just think it's odd, atypical, and somehow it's like bizarre. And that's the, people feel when they observe those behaviors. So these are all not just like intentional behaviors and then they do. However, these are mostly like, their lack of, social sense and people sense and people perception. So that's how we categorize behaviors. So again, these are all totally focused on the child behaviors. And then we have a different perspective. So this is a student-focused behavior analysis. So these categorization is just behavior-focused analysis. However, these, the other one is a student-focused analysis. Let's go back to this behavior-focused one. These are I gave you these categories based on the frequencies my study found. So I published this article in 2022, prevention of school failure. Yeah, prevention of school failing. That's a PSF, right? Yeah, that journal, I have just published that article, what kind of behaviors in schools, behaviors of students display. And then that is the number one most frequently displayed behavior is disruptive behaviors. And then next one is a passive off-task behaviors. And then third one is non-compliance, non-response. And then aggressive and defiance behavior. And then following one is social emotional part. And then next one is not social emotional, the emotional outburst. Those more like EI and ASD students could show, but many students have very anger issues and they have a huge anger management and they have, it's very small percentages, but however, it is their impact is very big to affect others. And then last one is those atypical behaviors by their lack of social sense and people skills. So these are the triangle like this. So most frequently one is the disruptive one. And then this student focused one is a totally different perspective. So not many people think about it. However, it's very important. Later, we need to hypothesis development, and then it is very important, how we consider those behaviors. So when we say disruptive behavior, and then it is just like a one category of, disruptive behavior, and there is no human there. So it's like, loud blood outs. It's just a disruptive behavior. And then tapping pencils, disruptive behavior, yelling at others is a disruptive behavior. And then just walk around the classroom and then leave the classroom, and anything not related to instructional activities are all disruptive behaviors. So if we do not focus on students, we do not analyze behaviors based on, student-focused analysis. If we don't do this, and then all disruptive behavior we focus, and then John's disruptive behavior, Brad's disruptive behavior, Brian's disruptive behavior, it's all same disruptive behavior because their form of, behavior types are all same. Right? They all tapping pencils. They all just, when they got frustrated, they just throw things, or they just throw things to get others' attention and to disrupt. And all those disruptive behavior is off-task behaviors. And then off instructional behaviors. So they do not participate and perform instructional things. So they do something else, right? So there is no human figures. How John does, why Brad does, why Matt does. Although their behaviors are all same, if we ignore their human characters in there who plays these games, and then our interpretation could be very like centralized, and then we don't see what kind of human figures there. And why this is a matter when we analyze, we have to add human figures there, because it's for the behavior shaping matters, behavior modification matters. So if we don't see human figures there, and then our modification, it's like an ABA method. ABA method, those, differential reinforcement and token economy and response cost and the extinction and shaping, chaining. We just apply all those method, we say evidence-based method we apply, and then we should have outcomes. And then this, school world should be very in paradise, and then teachers should continue their jobs, not just quitting their jobs, and they don't complain about how difficult it is. And then many times the teachers sigh after school, and then all students are left for home, and then they sit at their desk, and then they just sigh, and they just think about just themselves. So what am I doing here? They don't have those kind of a moment. It's all exciting because all these evidence-based method applied, and then all those behaviors should be managed. And it doesn't matter, it's just short term and long term, and the student could have those behaviors, but every day, teacher applied those behaviors and they could survive the day. But it is not the case. So we have to add a student's figure there. So it's a Matthew's tapping pencil and John's tapping pencil, and then Brad's tapping pencil, and then their needs and their figures, it's all different. So it is very important, because if we add a student there, and then really John's problem is he could not follow classroom activities, because he's very behind, academically very behind. So he could not participate, and he felt lonely there, and then very boring because he could not follow all this. And then it's so much empty time, and the teachers just keep going on and on and on. And other students, he looks around, and they are very busy with the teachers. If they feel like I'm the only one kind of left behind, or just living alone, and then feeling just he's on the island in the classroom. So that's John. So, and then Matthews could not follow the teacher's thing because he has difficult auditory processing issues. So in the beginning, he could pay attention. However, his sustained attention is kind of short. And then he got lost. Academically, he's okay because his parents work on his academics a lot, and he has tutors at home, and so he could read and comprehend the grade level work. However, in the classroom, and then teacher teaches, and then about 5 or 10 minutes, he could follow the teacher, and then that's it. So the rest of the time, and then he just lost, and then he attention, and then he came back, and then teacher already jumped ahead there, so could not follow, and then he got lost again. That's during the last day, he just kept the pencil because it's so boring sitting there. So it doesn't matter, he's academically, he's functional. However, his, attention spans and auditory issues, processing issues, so really prevent him to follow teachers, instructions. And then, he felt, saying John just left alone, and then he just tried, and then tried, and then stopped. So that's what he does. So students, those are academic deficiencies, and then those are cognitive, because this Brad's case is cognitively he could not hold himself to process what teacher is teaching, right? And then other child, maybe just in the morning, lack of sleeps and skip the breakfast, and then pretty much no energy. So he could not do it almost every morning. He got up late, and then his parents never just woke him up. And then he always skipped the, breakfast, and then he just ran to school with empty stomachs, and he comes to school until lunchtime. He could not focus. So all kinds of reasons, even though they show all those behaviors, but all kinds of reasons and precursors behind could be different. So I say just a student focused analysis you do, and then those cognitive deficiencies, and then academic deficiencies, and then environmental deficiencies, the teacher's teaching style, and then teacher's competence, efficacy, and then those classroom management part is all about the teachers, right? How the teacher is organized the classroom well, and then how teacher, teaches the academics. So let's say students are more like, visual, learners. However, teacher kept talking and explaining, and then requires the students auditory processing, and then they got lost in the middle of a teacher's teaching. Right, so that's teacher's environment, and then child personality trait is also contribute to their behaviors, what kind of a form of behaviors they show. Usually just extroverted students, active students, disrupt the whole class when they got bored. However, introverted students or some quiet, passive ones, they distract themselves, but not really like a whole class, even though they're just behavior, just similar types of forms of behaviors they show. So it's a student's trait, and then environmental, those, adults, and their home adults, how they just provide care them for daily school, performance, and then teachers, how they teach, because academically teachers really teach well. Academically, teachers just insightfully conceptualize the whole content, and then teacher could just show it's a very structured, organized form of academic content can present. And if a teacher just know all those, however, teacher has a lack of higher order thinking or cognition, and then they could not conceptually integrate the whole content and then put out as a very organized form. They could not do that, and then teacher could just mumble jumble or just pieces they just introduce, and then student has to integrate the whole content of pieces by themselves. So, however, students could not do that, and then they get lost. So it's all kinds of reasons. So, including students their own, deficiencies with the cognitive deficiencies and academic deficiencies. And then cognitive deficiency doesn't mean they must have disabilities. It doesn't matter. Cognitively, their attention, sustained attention, selective attention, focused attention, divided attention, those attention is just almost 100% of their cognitive ability, their cognitive functions. So it's not just you just tell them that's like, hey guys, pay attention, just look at me. And that means the child will all see that. She could have a selective attention momentarily, right? So it's just like a clap and everybody watch me. Are you seeing me? And then make sure. And then she got all 20 children's 40 eyes on her. And then she has a selective attention. However, it doesn't mean she could, sustain their attention until 40 minutes and 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes during those instructional time, right? So these are all just a student-focused analysis. So it's the same. So I mean, we don't choose this one or this one. It's like a behavior focused one or a student focused one. I'm not saying this. However, we are aware as a teacher, these are behavior focused analysis. So I know what kind of behaviors, forms of behaviors little Johnny shows. And then these are the Johnny's, characteristics. This is Johnny's personality traits. This is Johnny's environmental factors. Of course, I have to, as a teacher, analyze my own teaching style, and then my classroom, part, and then Johnny's any kind of a cognitive, functions. So Johnny has just a good visual processing function, and then auditory processing function, and then Johnny has a good attention, and then visual perception is very important, and all those are ready, and then Johnny could digest, because these cognitive parts affect the children's very basic, those visual attention and the visual perception, very low level of perception impact their early literacy and numeracy. However, regular literacy and numeracy is like a comprehension writing. It's all about the thinking. So they need those kind of influential part, those, abstract concepts. So I say just like, conceptual processing they need. So to follow in, inferentially to understand. So all kinds of altogether, it really looks like complicated. However, it's all, we organize this and we could see clear, behind the precursor factors, what can affect their same behavior, but based on the children, it could have a different behind the stories. Okay, so it is very important. So when we do, behavior analysis, and then we find a hypothesis. So this hypothesis is pretty much, precursors there. So what is behind the story, behind the behaviors? So we have to consider those, and then we could do just, these are the all understanding behaviors. And then behavior shaping ranking is different. For the behavior shaping, behavior modification, it is a different story. So these are all to understand those behaviors. However, when we consider which one is the mildest behavior, which one is the most hardest behavior, we have to do focused analysis, and then we rank order those behaviors. So this rank order means how long it takes. So that's a shaping matters. So it's not just like a magnitude, the intensity of a behavior. So it's aggressive behavior takes longer than disruptive behavior. It's not that. Any behavior has more behind things. That means the precursors, and it takes longer than the behavior. Simply just a very simple one, and then the child is all capable, and then no deficiencies behind, and then it's only teacher's teaching style matter. And then child, let's say not teaching style, let's say teacher's personality, and then child personality. Child is a very prideful child, very bold characteristics the child has, and very sensitive about anything just touch his pride, and then he's just like a reaction is a response is very, aggressive. And then teacher is very direct, authoritative, and then she has only just like a boom, boom, boom. This is what you need to follow. And then child and teacher is a similar characteristics. They just bump, right? Then if once a teacher realizes what really provoked his aggressive behaviors, and then teacher see that it's not child that has to shape, it's a teacher has to shape her own attitude and behaviors, right? So which one is easier? It's a teacher. So I realize, as soon as I realize I'm the one of a contributor to the child behaviors, and then I just reflect myself, and then I use a different method, and then he and I are very conflicting characteristics together, personality together, and then I just make a friend of him. It doesn't mean just like a friend means just no respect, no authority. However, socially, emotionally, he and I has some bond, and then after school, you could have a time with him, get to know each other, and then I understand him, he understands me, and then we agreed, and then we could work together, right? That is the mildest behavior you could work on, because a child does not have any other baggages so you need to work on. So you can easily, even though the behavior, magnitude, the intensity is very severe and hard, however, it could spend, take a shortest time, duration. However, child disruptive behavior, passive off-task behavior, it's just a very mild form of a behavior, mild magnitude, intensity. However, child has a severe comprehension deficit, severe handwriting deficit, severe, writing deficit, and it will take much longer. Why? Because you have to remediate, diagnostically remediate child these deficiencies first. good thing is once you remediate those deficiencies and then child's difficulties are remediated, and then you may not need to work on behaviors because those disruptive behaviors gradually disappear. Why? Because you increase child participation while remediating his difficulties. And every class, while you're working on this remediation education, however, inside the classroom every day, you know the child has those deficiencies and you frequently check on him while other students work, and then you provide individualized help and support. So there is no reason child need to be disruptive, right? Child will participate and follow your lessons, and then child can, there is no reason he has that. So that's the, part is that that's a good part. So once the child has all those deficiencies remediated, and then child could have a peace in peace, and then child participate in your lessons. You recognize the child participation, child success, and then you compliment it, and then he's gonna be a competent learner. And then there is no reason child display behaviors. So that's the pros and cons together. So however, I just say adult provoked behaviors could be an easiest one, because adult change their attitude, their own behaviors, and their own deficiencies. Because if a teacher does not, show the teachers those competent teacher figures, efficacies, a teacher could try and they know what kind of weaknesses they have, right? And then if a teacher changes, let's say every time teacher gives out a worksheet, and then teacher always just sit down at her desk and then busy with the grading, busy with the developing, planning next day's lessons, or just a teacher is in graduate school and student, so she has assignment to submit tonight, and then she's busy with that. And then mostly those, disruptive behavior became wild. And then she realized that one day, oh, that's the reason why I have so many students are off tasking. So she stopped all those work, and then she stopped sitting at her desk while students are working. And then she just walk around with a red pen, and then she just check everybody's work, especially those slow learners, slow workers. She walked there, and then she checked on their work, and then she just, look at this. And then she explained this, very lightly, and then let's just do it. And then she watched, and then, yes, that's correct, great, you got it. And then she just pat her, student head or shoulders back, and then just, good job, John, I like that, yes, continue. And then she walked to the mat, she walked to the, bread, and she walks around those slow learners and she checks. And then she's going to have those disruptive behavior, probably 90% less, right? Because she's with the student. Those disruptive students need the teacher's attention so they can participate. So this is the easiest one, even though teacher has so many children disruptive, and then they have to reflect their own teaching style and what they do especially when they have students around. So I tell my, pre-service teachers, and do not plan any work, any your personal work, private work, non-related to your teaching. Don't bring those to school, because we are human beings. Anything we brought to school, and then that is a seductive object. It's not only students have a seductive object, teachers have a seductive object too. So you plan to buy a house, plan to buy cars, you are very interested in something, buying phone and computer, or you have a graduate school and you have assignment, or you have something just going on, and then you constantly plan to sit down and focus on that while your students are all over in your classroom. And then you do not know why your students are very wild. So you have to reflect yourself, and then you choose which one is better. You know, even though you have a wild class, nobody's, you know, talk about that, it's okay. And then you just like, okay, I can leave them alone, and then I just want to finish my own work. Or you want to have a peaceful classroom, and then you worried about student future, and then you really just a student achievement is your pride. So you just work for your own pride, your self-achievement, accomplishment. So your achievement and accomplishment is in your student. If your students are very competent learners and they learn so well, that is your achievement. So you have your own pride, dignity from your own self-accomplishment. It's the same. So it's always students and teachers are reciprocal relationships, very reciprocal relationship. If teachers succeed and then students succeed, teacher fail and student fail. There is no vice versa. Okay, so it's very important. So again, I started with you know, behavior focused perspectives and student focused perspectives. And then I talked about behavior shaping and modification part. So those, you know, behavior focused one is like an all out exterior. It's like you see the house exterior, what kind of form and types of a house. It's a colonial style or, you know, ranch style. And then what kind of, you know, roof it has, and the window has, and the siding has. It's the same thing. Student behavior is like those exterior part. So you could see, observe, and then that's a disruptive behavior. That is aggressive behavior. That is, so you could tell that. But student focus perspectives are interior things. So even though the, you know, students showed this form of behaviors, you know, same colonial, you know, 2 stories houses, however, inside the floor plan is totally different. Right? So some house has a much, you know, most of a space for the lounge or, you know, group life, and then bedroom is small, or some house is a huge square foot house. However, you know, small, like only 3 bedrooms, and then, you know, huge kitchen, huge family room, and a huge, you know, even movies, theaters, and they have all those. And some house that has, you know, small, but, you know, bedrooms are pretty much, you know, good size. And then most of our family just we sleep in the bedroom, so we stay in the bedroom. So it's all different types. It's a student focused, the student centered perspective. So we see those behaviors outside there, but inside what's going on. So student has what kind of difficulties they have, or what kind of environment they have, or what make them struggle, what make them just not to participate, you know, as a learners, and those kind of a part we see. However, behavior shaping wide, we have to consider not just those exterior part, we have to consider students focused one. So those difficulties are, you know, included and then involved, and then we have to, no matter what happens, we must remediate their, you know, precursors first. No matter how much evidence-based, how strong, prominent behavior management method and strategies you have, that is all temporary management. It's not permanent long-term modification and shaping. Okay, so it is very important we see how we consider these. And most of our teachers in school, and then behavior specialists in school district, and they studied with all those, they do data collection on this student part. However, when they develop behavior intervention plan, and then they barely consider this part, and they just automatically focused on their behaviors, and then what kind of a method they could use. And the most, you know, prominent popular behavior management method is a token economy. And then this token economy is amazing, amazing method. However, if you use a pre-mac principle in token economy, and then you fail, because you don't teach any, you just set up the system. If you do this and that, and then you will get this. So there is no teaching there. You just have an expectation. So students, you stay in your seat for 30 minutes, and then you will get 10 minutes of computer time. So these computer time, the reinforcement, however, it doesn't mean child can stand for 20, 30 minutes without doing anything, because child could not follow instructions. So in the beginning, child will try, and then in the nature of children, they can stand that boredom. So that's the what most popular one, and that's why we fail, because we do not teach, we do not shape step by step. We don't do any procedural shaping modification. We just expect. If we just provide a good reinforcement, and then student will do it. That much student as a child could do it, and then we don't have this much headaches. So I just want to share this, behavior focused and student focused perspective. So what kind of a difference we can make? I'm going to stop here, and thank you for listening.